The Macabre World podcast is brought to you by Darker Art Studio, home of real human bone jewelry. Stock and custom pieces are available, so visit us on the web at www.darkerartstudio.com and show them your darker art side. Macabre World, a podcast from Darker Art Studio, where we explore the dark, strange, and unusual from this world and beyond. Hello and welcome to the Macabre World podcast, the Valentine edition. And with me is Dr. Dana Anderson, forensic psychologist. And among other things, she's going to tell us how to not have a killer date for Valentine's Day. Dr. Dana, thank you so much for joining me.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
It's going to be a fun time. So starting off, forensic psychologist. I think some of us have heard the term. Tell me a little bit more about what you do.
So just a lot of people think a forensic psychologist is a forensic scientist. So they have this visual image in their head that it's somebody at a crime scene that's collecting, DNA. But that's a forensic scientist. So just to clarify, the word forensis comes from the Latin word forum, and that's where law courts in Rome were held. So think of the criminal justice system. So a psychologist in the criminal justice system determines if someone has a mental health disorder. Essentially, in short, just like a forensic scientist, they would decide, how that scientific evidence relates to someone being guilty or innocent. So I do psych evals for the criminal court. I can also do it for civil court or family law court, but criminal court, that's my favorite.
And you've also been a consultant for the ID channel and some of the other, the Crime Door TV show for their true crime.
Yes, there is going to be an episode on Investigative Discovery that's coming out called Mean Girl Murders. And I give the background on some of these individuals who committed these crimes. So I go through their pathology and their character traits. And it's interesting because these are females. So I'm able to talk about that and how their crime manifested. So I did contribute to that. And then Crime Door TV, they're giving a lot of great information to help people solve crimes in real time. You can download the app. It's free to watch on TV. So I'm just contributing as an expert to provide some information and background about the types of crimes or criminals or just certain questions that I can answer for them.
So there's a little bit of everything out there. I think there was a time where if people, I think a lot of us over the years got into a lull of complacency. I'm going to say before the internet, it shattered it for all of us that, little small towns, nothing happened in small towns. All of these horrific stories that you hear always happen somewhere else to someone else. And I think a lot of the influx and the shows and everything is showing how close it really does hit. And that we have all been touched by it. I think a lot of people are fascinated by it, if either on the one hand to figure out what makes these types of people tick, or on the other hand, they want the gory details because it's so far out of their comfort zone. So I know it's a big deal right now that people are interested in that. We have a lot of stuff in the news going on. The Moscow, Idaho killer is top news. This is recorded a little bit ahead, but that's a big deal right now.
Yeah, it really makes you look at those people around you, and just like people who knew Brian Kohberger and go back now and look at their interactions with him or anything in his behavior that they could identify. So now detectives are going back and asking those people closest to him, his classmates, his family members or friends, even going back to his acquaintances in grade school to find out more about who he is. And it is interesting because some of his classmates in grade school, junior high, and high school, how they described him as being an overweight kid who, got made fun of, and he was a nice guy, maybe, and then later getting into heroin or drugs, and you start to see the timeline of events of him transitioning to a different person.
You see almost a decay happening into the, because I mean, I'm gonna come right out and say it. I was the fat kid who got made fun of. I've never hurt anyone. It's true. It's true. I was horrifically bullied. It actually made me just to not want to ever be cruel. That's me.
I was a scrawny, skinny, malnourished poor kid from a big family in a little trailer, and that wasn't cool. I definitely was not very popular growing up and pretty shy. But yeah, I always stuck up for the underdogs, and I always, I understood, but I actually made a conscious choice. Like, I felt, I guess I developed a strong moral compass. I have goodness in me and I want to help others. And I actually protected people that were being bullied or made fun of. And I certainly didn't like it when it happened to me, and I knew what it felt like. And I was more of a protector. I actually had some odd friends, but
they're the best kind.
Well, yeah, I just authentically being good or kind to people. So that's who I am. And
I wonder when you see a guy like this young man that's in the Moscow, Idaho killings, in just at a glance. It's just, and for folks, if I don't know how you couldn't be familiar with it, it's all over the news, but if you Google the Moscow, Idaho murders, you will see pictures of the killer that was apprehended. And I think that outside of the whole, if you look at a random picture of him that doesn't involve law enforcement all over him, you would take a look at that person, and if you dropped him on a college campus, he would blend right in. This is someone who looks like, any kid USA. It's, to the untrained eye, he is, he's someone who blends in, who mainstreams. And I think one of the things I find so daunting about the concept of killers and crime and these horrific stories is that so many people say, but he was such a nice kid, or he was a quiet guy, and it's always the guy who, raises orchids and hamsters, and then you find out later that's there were all these signs and symptoms. So just like I think I would say, somebody who has the presentation, like I said, of the all-American boy, that Ted Bundy was at the time very charismatic and handsome and everything. Where's the flip switch? I mean, are they outcasts and they feel that way? What's some of the anatomy? What are some of the things that make somebody do the things that they do?
Well, first I want to say it's easy to make assumptions about people when you see them, but you don't know what lies beneath.
That's very true. And, I think that there's a lot of stuff to navigate out there. I mean, people are making connections in new ways. I hate to blame the internet, because if it weren't for the internet, we wouldn't be here. But I hate to blame the internet. But the internet has, I think, in some ways, especially when it comes to people messaging people dating online, I think in a lot of ways it has given people a false sense of intimacy, because they feel through the conversations that they have, and they, even though they haven't met them, the person in question, they feel that they have feelings, they have a connection. And I'm not saying you can't connect with someone in some ways through conversation, but I think that's a huge mask.
Well, I want to touch on that, because when you say a false sense of intimacy, now Brian stalked these individuals in Idaho for weeks prior to killing them. Now, people that kill, they usually choose certain people that they maybe want to have a relationship or want to be intimate with. It's a fantasy. They obsess on it. Obsessions is the thoughts. Compulsion is finally the action. Now, what happens sometimes with stalking or watching someone on the internet or being obsessed with someone or feeling like you're connected to them, these girls were gorgeous and
They were very lovely. Yeah.
They were very attractive, and they seemed to have a lot of things going for them, and it unattainable. It seems like they would be out of your league, but even you watching them each day, day after month, or even, if someone's watching someone for years, you could feel like you know them, or you want to know them more and they don't know you. Maybe you try to befriend them, friend request them,
right?
Or you want to interact with them. So you could set yourself up. Let's just say I don't know them. I want to get to know them. So their waitress, they're working at the restaurant. He comes in and he can just continue to come in, have interactions in his mind, have a fantasy that a relationship could happen, will happen, that grandiose thought process.
Right.
And when we talk about that false sense, in a killer's mind, someone that can't handle rejection or can't handle any perceived rejection. And that's your, all of these people, these killers always have some narcissistic traits. Their ego is so deeply wounded and it turns out into rage, and they're going to eliminate you to deal with their emotions. But it is ominous to think that, we want to put ourselves out there.
Sure.
And without people stalking or becoming obsessed with wanting to know you on a more intimate level and then being frustrated because they can't. But it does. So that is the downside of having so much information being public.
Well, there's so little privacy, and not in necessarily the bad way. There's so little. Like, I can tell you that on my Facebook friends list, there's going to be at least 4 people I can tell you easily off the top of my head that I haven't talked to, like actually had a conversation with, live or in text, and I don't know how long, but I can tell you what they had for lunch today. I can tell you where they went. And I think that people, in sharing a lot of their day-to-day activity, are they not laying out the map for a stalker to do their work? Are they making it easy?
Yeah, there's another topic I talk about, how to stop a stalker, but you can also, you don't want yourself to be, you don't want to share so much information that people know where you're at. You can post things and almost pretend to be someplace else than you're really at. You don't have to actually give away where you're at or where you live. Sometimes people think they know where I'm at or what I'm doing, and they don't know, trust me. So that's my little secret, or only information. And I have been stalked before. So you can filter information where you want it to go, and then you find out how it comes back to you and who knows what or how it's getting out. And you can change information, how you present it. So you certainly don't want yourself to be too attainable. And of course, you would never give any information about where you live or any of those things, which we can definitely talk about on how not to date a serial killer, murder.
Yeah, well, it would be an unfortunate thing. Well, I don't think anybody wants to get murdered. I'm pretty sure that's usually not the desired effect. And I think that, like I said, we're inundated with true crime shows and true crime information and podcasts and all of that type of thing. And I think that, we're all trying to, there's got to be a line somewhere between paranoia and safety, between letting someone in to get to know you, but not divulging too much, and how to basically keep your safety and keep control without, losing out on the social connection.
Yeah, control the narrative, control the information you do put out there.
I think that's really important. I've often, like, I've sometimes seen somebody saying, well, we're at vacation, we're going to the airport right now. I mean, I'm saying to myself, just, tell everyone you're not at home. And whatever, and there's nothing wrong with posting vacation pictures and stuff, but I tend to do it after you get back, do it after you've been and gone, that kind of thing. But they're out there. Murderers are out there, are they not? They're among us.
They are, and I talk to them all the time, and I have spent time at state hospitals, jail. I've talked to people on parole who've gotten out of prison. I worked for CONREP, a conditional release program where people who had committed murder or attempted murder, they were on my caseload. I was kind of like their parole officer because I got to go to their home. We did all kinds of checks, drug tests. We could search their apartment. It was kind of next level, kind of like anything happened, we could send them back to the state hospital.
Wow.
So I've had lots of different conversations, and I was their therapist too. So I ran groups, I talked to them. And so I've learned a few things, and things, how not to get murdered. So,
well, aren't many, not all, obviously. There's too many facets to this to put it too neatly into a box. But in many cases, people who are narcissists, who are, have that type of psychosis, who are, pathological, there's a like you said, grandiose thoughts and everything. There's a charisma that sometimes people like that can create, and that they can go under the radar of the average person and just seem charismatic, and they figure out there's something wrong only when it's too late. Either they're stuck in an abusive relationship or worse, God forbid. So, they're out there. How do you tell everyone's I'm just going to be blunt. There are some people you meet and they're a little full of themselves and you say, yeah, well, that's just an asshole. And what's the difference between somebody who's just an asshole and somebody who's a big red flag? Because can they fool us? Can they make us think we're normal?
Well,
They make us think they're normal. Sorry.
They can fool you, but
they can't fool you.
They can't fool me. Oh, yeah, they cannot. So I'm here to give free tips on how to recognize some of these red flags, some of these behaviors, and you don't need to go out and get a doctorate to have all this information. There are certain basic things to look for. Now, we can't change other people. There's psychopaths out there. There's some crazy people out there, right? Your goal is let's avoid them, or let's not engage in a connection with them, or date them, marry them.
Or try not to. Yeah, no, that seems bad.
Try not to. That's because then you're in trouble. So you need to control the things you do. So
when you're meeting, let's say, the rando guy slides into your DMs. See, listen, I sound just like the kids. He slid into my DMs. So the rando guy slides into your DMs, and assuming you've ruled out that he isn't a Nigerian prince and all of the other obvious pitfalls, and seems to be a good conversationalist, or someone that you have a lot in common with, they are sharing your interests. So you're piqued, you're interested, and what's the first thing someone should do when they make a random encounter, a conversation? And this could be also in the real world, because you run into people just day to day that may be curious or interesting. So what's the first thing somebody needs to do when they realize, okay, this is somebody I think I could potentially like to meet up with? What should they do next?
Okay, well, first of all, you don't even have to respond if anyone messages you. I know I talk to people and they're like, I have to respond back to everyone. Good Lord. You rarely respond to anything, only if it's worthy content. There's a lot of people that are going to DM you. You do not owe anyone a response. You can not respond. I've had some people message me for years, obsessively, dozens of times. That already is the red flag. Okay. I'm never going to respond now. We're done.
Right.
But first of all, I would say if I was like, wow, I'm curious. What should I know? Are they who they say they are? Okay. People. I look at their profile. Suddenly they just existed 2 days ago
Right.
and befriended all your friends or whatever. It's like, come on. They're not who they say. Like, Google their name. They should have a name, a first and last name. They need to verify themselves. I won't have contact with anyone unless I can verify who they are. So I could say, I'd love to connect with you on LinkedIn. How boring is that? Well, I just kind of want to know if you have a job. Okay.
Fair enough. That's a great start.
Adulting 101. I mean, I got a job. I'm assuming you have one too. Almost everyone
I
does.
do.
If you don't, then you might live in your mom's basement. Or why aren't you working? Which is concerning. Tell me more about that. So anyway, you have to exist on the internet somehow. And don't buy into the comments like, oh, my job is so important, or I'm in the investigative world, or police officer. I am so tired of hearing that one. And you
Even
exist.
somebody with a secretive job can show you verification that they have a secretive job. I mean, I've met folks that I'm from an area that has a military base. I'm from near Newport, Rhode Island, and somebody would tell you, I work on the base, and I'm looking at the front bumper of their car and there's no sticker on it. I know they're full of crap, because even though they couldn't tell me what top secret thing, I'm doing air quotes for everybody, top secret thing that they do, I know that there are places you can't have access without that at the time. I think things are a lot tighter now. We're talking about the 80s. Things like that. People can verify that they are who they are, and they do what they say they do without divulging anything that will cripple national security.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm going to go on a date with you, you need to be verified. And so let's just say I verify this person, I Google them. I have done this before, and I've seen their YouTube video or some random thing, or I connect with them on Facebook, and then I hear their voice and it's like cringy. They didn't pass the voice check. We don't even go on a date. You also have to pass the video check. So let's just say we do a live video, because you're a real person. You've told me you're a real person. I verified you. So, someone could catfish and pretend to be someone.
Right.
Now
That's usually a red flag if they won't video chat. That suggests that or they won't talk on the phone because they look or sound like someone or something other than what they've presented.
Exactly. So we do a quick video chat. I'm who I say I am, because that's who I am. That's
Right.
what you get if you date me. But then, so I see you, and and I've had this happen doing it. I thought this hot firefighter guy, right? And we end up and he just had a high pitched voice, and it was, this is never gonna happen. You can
I
just
was going to wait
right
around for a guy with a higher voice than me. I'd still be single. So, so there are there are parameters that some of us had to expand a little bit. But so all right. So you know what? So he's got a decent voice. He's it's gonna, and says, how about we go out?
Okay, let's do some ABCs. I just jotted down some ABCs because
Okay.
We got a lot of things on our mind, A, B, C, D. That's about all I can remember at the end of the day. So A, arrive on your own terms. That translates into don't get into a car with any stranger ever. Okay. Look, I've got AAA. If my car breaks down, I've got a lot of other options.
Right.
So I have talked to a lot of people, hitchhikers, prostitutes, different people who don't have cars and walk. Okay. I worked inpatient in the psych hospital for 4 years. I heard thousands of stories about people that walk, and a lot of homeless people who get into cars with strangers. And I've heard the outcomes of those stories, them winding up naked in a ditch, all the terrible things that happen. I would not risk it getting into a vehicle with anyone I didn't know. And there's no reason to.
I don't want to get sued, so I'm just not going to say the name of the app. So I'm taking it you don't use a car ride app.
That is a verifiable,
Oh,
because
is
it
it?
tells me who is driving. Like if it's Kevin's driving up in a, white Ford,
Toyota, whatever. Yeah.
white Ford Bronco, and the license plate is X,
Right.
I see it and I verify the license plate.
Yeah.
And so and you can rate them, and they're recording your time in the car. And you can also set up an app to have someone else notified, like my sister, if there's an emergency. So that is okay. That you could.
So the car ride apps are, well, initially I think there were problems and there were loopholes, and they've added these safety features. So it's good to hear that that's safe, because it seems awfully convenient. But yeah, to be able to be on, not have anybody, good Lord, give anybody your address and not have anybody pick you up, and not, to be there under your own steam, so that if you need to remove yourself from the situation, you can do so without having to depend on anyone or anything for a ride.
Mm-hmm. So, and killers want to control the situation. Who has more control than the person driving you in your vehicle? Not only are they going to find out where you live, they're in control of what time you leave.
And where you're going.
Exactly. And, step one is you go to verify who this person is, because killers are always going to present themselves as someone that they're not, more like someone else that they've, in their grandiose imagination has like manifested. So they definitely like over exaggerate their good qualities, and they aren't truthful to themselves or others. And they do try to appear that they are better than they are. And so it can seem very intriguing, but it's not true. So all of the things before you get yourself in a date and you're having these conversations, we're not gullible. We don't just believe it because someone said it. You've already done your homework. You've verified who they are.
Yeah, you've done that. You've gotten the proof. And so, all right, let's say we're going to call him Mr. Wonderful, not to be confused with that bald guy who's an investor. So this Mr. Wonderful has checked the boxes. I assume that when people have the type of disturbances and mental pathologies that you deal with when you're talking to people who are killers, it must be ironic, because in the situation of going on a date and trying to lure in someone to be involved with, they're going to try to disguise their sickness, whereas so many people in your work, when there becomes to between them and prison, they try to exaggerate their sickness. So it's sort of two sides of the coin there. So, people going on a date, like, they would do so, let's say to get out of maybe hard prison or whatever. But, so somebody goes on a date and they seem delightful, and you have coffee and the conversation flows. All, like I said, all the boxes check. Assuming that, and this is not to say that adults can't consent and enjoy themselves however they deem fit, but a modicum of caution. You meet in a public place, and you always, like you said, control the narrative. So, but people get drawn in at this point, because then it was a real date and it was a good date. And what are they looking for in the person's behaviors?
Well, first of all, that's a mistake to be drawn in. At this
Ah,
point, in that, if you are, well, that's the problem. If you're drawn in, but you didn't do the step A, because then you're already sort of in a relationship. You're now
open
in
the door.
this date. You've opened it. You open the door. Now you're in this, and now you're more likely to continue to see this person, especially if you're already engaged in the conversation or enthralled, or you like them in some aspects. Number one thing I would say anyone can do to protect themselves: boundaries. Know your boundaries before you go out with anyone or engage in any potential future relationship. If you don't know your limits, someone will set them for you. Killers will always test your boundaries. I did my dissertation on like domestic violence homicides. It always starts with tiny boundary violations, small things that they'll ask you to do for them. And over time, it'll increase the request. Your job is, before you even find yourself in this situation, like you already know where you begin and where you end. I already know what my boundaries are. I already know who I am, and my self-worth and self-esteem are intact. I'm not looking to go on a date for someone else to give me value or to tell me who I am or to give me compliments. You're way too vulnerable. And that's a huge mistake for women. They feel like, I'm going to get dressed up and I'm going to look a certain way and you're going to get all this feedback that makes you feel good. You're vulnerable.
And not to be overly PC, but this also works both ways with both genders. There are anyone who has, and also, you know, for people that are non-binary too, anyone who has a lower self-esteem, who's seeking validation from another person, is putting themselves in a vulnerable position, because it becomes more important to seek that validation than to enforce boundaries.
100%. Absolutely. So no matter what gender you're at, or no matter what your preference is, you don't want to be in a situation where you're dependent on what someone else thinks of you.
That's good advice for us all at any point in life, at any stage.
You never want to be on a date and you're so much hoping they'll like you. I'm the one in control. And that brings us to C. Control. So we have arrive on your own terms, A. B for boundaries, C, control the outcome. I'm in control of the date because I came in my own car or got dropped off. I already know my boundaries. We don't know this person yet, or I don't know if I would want to get intimately involved. I need to know more about this. I'm gathering the information. This is an interview. They may not pass. It's okay if they don't.
So you need to go into literally as the manager. You're the hiring manager.
I'm the hiring manager. And I'm not sure, what kind of qualifications you bring for this job.
Now, do people, is that something that I, now let's say you just lucked out and you happen to have somebody with a deep psychosis sitting across the table from you who up until this point maybe has masked it as best as they could. Maybe not from you, but let's say the rest of us, okay, who have has masked it. What kinds of things in like random conversation are we looking for? Because they're not going to tell you that they like set the cat on fire and wet their bed. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're going to leave out the obvious stuff. I wouldn't think, I should say, I'm making it sound like I'm an authority. I wouldn't think they're going to cop to it. Hi, by the way, what'd you do? Well, this morning I filleted my landlady. And then, I think we're going to look at the wine list. It doesn't really quite go that way, but
if it did,
but if it did, yeah, that's a good. One of the things we always used to say for blind dates back in the day was to have somebody, your safe call, somebody call you a few minutes or a little ways into the day. This way, if it's your way out.
Absolutely. I've had friends that'll say, they're going to be at the restaurant too. It just so happens, and they're going to bump into us, and halfway through our date, it's a double date.
Right.
Your friends will tell you what they think. They will tell them. There's no better way to find out about something. Throw them into a mix of your real friends. They'll flush them out real quick. But definitely, so as far as you controlling the outcome, so you've already told someone where you're going. So how I like to control the outcome? I say, I'll meet you here for coffee before I go to yoga, for example. So I'm dressed like a homeless person. Doesn't matter. I don't need to impress you. And we'll go for coffee, and it's 30 minutes. So I control the time. This is just a meet and greet, before I even decide if I would even get dressed for you or do my hair. But so you control the outcome. So you say what you want or where you want to go or what you're doing. And because this is a meet and greet. We don't know. You haven't developed a relationship with them yet.
Now, the average person is going to be like, oh, that would be wonderful, and everything. But somebody who wants to maintain control is going to balk. they're gonna have some
Well, they're going
problems
to
with them.
test your boundaries or they're going to respect your boundaries.
Gotcha.
Now, so testing boundaries is a problem because if they don't respect your boundaries, they don't respect you. So if I,
I know almost bears repeating. Someone who doesn't respect your boundaries doesn't respect you.
so it's time limited. So let's just say, I have time for an hour, or even you went to dinner. But so keep your word and say what you mean. So if you're just setting a limit. Now you can change the limit if the guy turns out to be really nice. So you can choose that. But if you're out on a date, you can always tell someone where you're at
Oh
or
yeah, that's always a good plan.
have a plan. So, or my ride's here because you've scheduled it. Your friend's picking you up, or obviously we all track ourselves through our phone or your Apple Watch or anything. You can set, there's lots of things you can do to track yourself. But you're not going to be a victim because you're too difficult to manage. Someone's going to miss you. People that get murdered, like as in homeless people, prostitutes, these hitchhikers, a lot of the people that and I have helped
Stay on the grid.
They're easy targets. They're vulnerable victims.
So definitely try to stay on the grid, track yourself. Those are, show that somebody is looking.
Yeah, because these people don't have a job to go to the next morning. No one's calling their family. They don't have a cell phone, an Apple Watch. There's no friends. There's no family. There's no one going to miss them. They could be missing for a year. They're runaways. That's who serial killers, that's how they start out practicing on victims. Someone who is easy to get in their car, get in their home, get in their bed, easy to disappear. No one's going to find them. And it's hardly traceable because how did those two people connect? There's, you want it. Yeah. You don't ever want to be so vulnerable in that way.
So a goodly amount of, and this is again, me speaking in generalities, is that, when killers, the very first kill, is it common that it's often convenient and proximal because it's their first?
Yes. So think of an opportunist, and we're all opportunists. As far as dating, we go within, studies will show us people date people closest within a radius around them. So there's those opportunists. So, but think of someone who's going to kill or offend, or even people that sexually offend or molest. It's going to be someone within that they have access to. That's going to be easier access to.
Things don't get elaborate until later on, if they do. But the proximity and access is huge.
Right.
That's got to be, it's got to be a thing because, all I can think of, and we had an offline conversation where we discussed, we were both big fans of the movie Silence of the Lambs, is I remember the line where he says, the killer sees what he covets. Such a tremendous way to present that access concept.
Yeah, he wants it. What's the saying? Men want to be with you and women want to be you. Women can be jealous in relationship aggression, retaliation, like women that are jealous of another woman, or but men want to be with you. Well, and I'm or whatever.
Well, I've seen that. I think a lot of us have seen that both played out in fictitious scenarios, and some of us have lived it or observed it in our lives, where if a woman is dating a man and the man steps out and then goes back to the original, the other woman is scorned and gets mad at the woman, or they never get mad at the guy. They get into a cat fight with each other because the women are focused on the female vanity thing. Come on, girls, we got to stick together on that one. Just but it gets crazy. Just the general concept. So you have, so they don't respect boundaries, and people aren't going to be, respecting, they're always going to try to push the boundary. Isolation. Is it still common for people to try to isolate?
Well, what a perfect way to keep you how I want you is to you only are talking with me and spending time with me, and you're not getting an outside perspective and you're getting more isolated from your friends, your peers, your family, and you're spending more time with me, you get overly enmeshed, overly dependent, brainwashed. And those are things to look for as far as someone taking you further and further away from your social support. And it can just start with small things like, I don't like your mom, or we don't need to go there. Why, it just starts, there's always small things that they're saying to you that usually cause, and it is typically women. I don't want to overuse them as the victims, but that's statistically true in crimes, that men kill men and men kill women. That's how this plays out. So if you're a woman, you are more likely to be murdered by
Partner,
your
isn't it?
intimate partner. So we really do have to talk about that. I'm a woman. And
coincidence, me too.
yeah, so I'm like, yay, I'm down with myself. I like myself. I don't want to get murdered. And I'm probably not going to get heart disease or cancer or different things because genetically, whatever. But I'm more likely to get murdered by an intimate partner. So I'm going to try not to. Okay. It's just like things, if certain things give you cancer, certain ways you could die, how not to die. There's risky behaviors, drugs, certain stuff. It's like how not to get murdered.
Don't get into ABC,
Don't get murdered. I don't want to get murdered. And it happens. It's still happening.
It is.
Femicide, the killing of women. This, historically, all of this is real. And I want to keep people safe. And let's not find ourselves so tragically lost or enmeshed in a relationship where we can't leave or can't get help or can't get resources or can't confront the problem or trying to escape. We want to avoid ever being engaged into this relationship. Now, when women try to leave a relationship, they have about a 700 times chance of dying during that period when they're trying to leave.
Right.
A violence relationship. So it's hard to get out, yes, but these are tips on how to not get into one. You have a better chance when you see these small things, just tap out.
Right.
It's like before you start your first day on the job, do all the research before you'd work there, right? I mean, these are all things we do. And then you end up staying there forever. There's plenty of fish in the sea. There's tons of people that might want to date you. You don't need to date a serial killer. They're out there, and guess what? They're available.
And I'm actually gonna go further and say, even though like I'm out of the dating pool, but even this is good advice, even if it's not just dating, because we come into contact with people all the time. We meet new people, and just it can be the guy behind you at the convenience store for all you know, and there's always like that whole like who's the nut in the room. I always worry because whenever I look around, I go, geez, everybody looks sane to me. That means I'm the weird one. But I'm the nut in the room.
But you're not a killer.
I am not. There are several lobsters that would probably disagree with you, but other than that, no, I'm not. But there is a fascination because I know for me, and this is just full disclosure, I do love crime shows. I'm fascinated by crime shows. I enjoy reading about some of it's the gore and the titillation because everybody loves oh no, because that's dramatic. But I'm very fascinated by what you do, and I try to kind of like get myself saying like I think there was a crime that involved my regular job place of work where someone did commit murder, and it was someone I knew. And it was someone I knew well enough to have worked with them every day. And I will tell you, I'm a reasonably hip lady. I talk to people all the time. I'm relatively social. I didn't know them very, very well, but I will tell you, there was at no point would I have connected that dot, not a one. And that I think spurns me to, it just makes me want to study more because I'm saying you had to have missed something. What am I missing? Because if I missed it that time, what happens if the next time I miss it and it's me?
Was this an intimate partner?
Yes.
Outside?
Yes.
Okay. Intimate relationships are so different. then if your work colleague, how they present at work and interact with you, it's different. It's a different relationship. Intimate is just as it means intimate. It crosses all kinds of lines of vulnerability. It's a different type of relationship. You do not know what goes on behind closed doors in an intimate relationship. People present themselves in one way. And I remember this going into Subway a few years ago, and then the workers saying, we can't believe this guy murdered his wife. Da, da, da. I worked with him. He worked for UPS.
He was such a nice, quiet guy. It's always that. He was such a nice, quiet guy.
Right, because I worked with him, I knew him and all this stuff. And I said, you don't know what goes on behind closed doors. Just like I wouldn't know what happens in your house at night or in your bedroom or your fights or arguments. Those are things that people wouldn't know, that, only someone that's maybe really close to you, your best friend or family. And those people, the signs are there. But if you're a colleague or coworker, you may not know those things. But there may be small things that you'll notice if you go back in your mind about your work colleague, some of the things you observed, that you can, certain tendencies or traits that were there. But yeah, that's why intimate partner violence is so sneaky and subtle, because it can be masked.
It would seem so, which makes, it's different. There's a lot of masks. There's a lot of masking, like I said. So someone finds themselves, let's say they have a moment of clarity and they've gotten themselves into a relationship, because up until then, say the mask held, and then now it's starting to crumble. They're starting to see the signs and everything. Do you confront the pathological liar? Because you can confront or not even just a pathological, you can confront a liar, because not all liars are pathological per se. But when you're catching somebody in a lie, let's say, and you confront them, they're just going to deny it. It's almost like a fruitless endeavor, because if you say, even though they're still lying, do you confront? Is that dangerous to confront a liar like that, especially if they may have, if they may be a psycho? What do you do at that point?
Well, I generally don't confront. I ask, and always ask a question to find out more. So pretend you're Detective Columbo.
Okay.
And
I even have the trench coat.
Maybe you don't have the trench coat or the accent or a cigar. But help me understand this. Tell me more about that. Let's just say they're lying. Okay. And I've done this on my ex-boyfriends. I already know something.
Right.
They're talking to someone else. They lied. I already know. I already know what I know.
They said they were at point A. They were actually at point B, whatever.
It's just, and you just maybe want to know more about, you're just asking questions. And then I watch them lie, and I find it very interesting how they lie, maybe how easy it was, and how they're just going to go add more unnecessary, irrelevant details to the story. That can be a red flag, but you don't need to confront it. Now, because let's just say I knew you stepped out on me.
I'm bad like that.
I know. I'm home late, and
I'm no good for you, Dana.
I know we're never gonna have a history together. And so I say to you, and I confront it. Well, first of all, I'm accusing and I'm making assumptions, and then of course that person's going to be defensive,
right?
And deny, and then they're going to accuse you of being crazy and all the stuff. So, but your goal is what? You want to find out more information. You're not going to find out more information when you point the finger or accuse. So you're still fact finding.
Right.
We need to know the frequency and severity of his lies, and how this manifests and how this plays out, and maybe how this affects me. And let's just say you ask more questions, and maybe they share something or they apologize or it comes out. So you're so you can always ask questions. If it was such a highly lethal relationship, like you felt in fear for your life and you needed to leave, now's not the time for confrontation. You pack your secret bag with all your basic necessities, like your, some cash, some clothes, your driver's license and your birth certificate, and, your you have a secret plan that you're escaping in a certain time, that's for you to know and them to find out.
Right. I always think of what was that movie with Jennifer Lopez? Enough.
Enough. Yeah.
There was a lot of interesting information in that film.
Yeah.
It really
Yeah.
was. That was a brilliant escape. And let's face it, J-Lo was something of a badass in that movie, but it wasn't entirely out of the, it was, sure, it was Hollywood and it was a very compelling story, but there are situations like that. It really highlighted on a lot of situations that unfortunately I do believe occur.
In the movie, she leaves, and of course he tracks her down, because
Right.
if there was domestic violence in the relationship, which means that person was overly controlling to their partner, they're going to want to extend that control, even though the relationship ended, which how they do that is even when you're gone, they're still trying to interfere with your life. Normal people would be like,
good riddance.
I don't need to control your life. Let me just work on controlling my life.
Right.
They get to control the outcome, and to the point they maybe need to silence that person and not have them talk to the police, because that person could get caught for, domestic violence or things. So stalking is a whole next level, which in the movie Enough, that he goes after her.
There's a
and stalks her to the point where she isn't safe. She fears for her life and has to go into hiding, and what that looks like. And that is real.
Oh yeah.
Those situations are real. And
she was like James Bond. She had stuff like Q-Made. She had some of the coolest self-defense gadgetry that I'd seen. And there's a lot out there. I don't, get into the politics of armed or not armed or whatever, but there are things that folks can do to keep themselves safe. There are, and depending on what state you live in, it might be something like pepper spray. It might be, you remember the kitty cat keychains? They look like a little cat head, but if you held it just right, the 2 points of the ears, they were metal, and it was supposed to like basically be an eye gouger of some sort. I mean, it was sort of like makeshift weapon. It just looked like a little metal kitty cat, but you stuck your hand through it, and the ears did ugly things if you were threatened.
Oh, that's amazing. I want one. I just got a flashlight that's also a taser, so it'll be looking like,
I love California. You guys are great out there, man. But that's very cool. But yeah, there's a lot of gadgetry out there. There's a lot of ways to feel safe. I'm lucky that I don't have that experience in my life right now, which I'm very grateful. But I think we've talked about a lot of things that I think all of us should be beware of. Beware of people that push your boundaries. Beware of people that are too controlling. And the last leg of this is, like I said, if it's not dating and it's not, what if you're on the outside looking in? Your friend has just started dating this guy, and you're on the outside. This is a very dangerous situation as far as keeping a friendship going. And you're seeing this. You're seeing the isolation. You're starting to see all, like, it's red flag after red flag after red flag, but your friend has stars in her eyes, and you see it getting worse and worse. What do you do? Do you do anything? Because it's really not your business, and they didn't ask for advice. So then what?
Okay, so they didn't ask for your advice. Ask questions to find out. Ask more questions. Listen to understand. It won't be helpful if you just give them unsolicited advice. You want to meet them where they're at. So to be very helpful, you are not in a position of judgment. They're already not in a good situation. Their self-esteem, self-worth is compromised. They're being brainwashed. When you go to help them, you need to assess how they see the problem, or if they even see it as a problem. So we need to be curious and find out more about what's going on in the relationship. So please ask open-ended questions. Open-ended question is a question that is not answered with yes or no. Here's a question not to ask. I hate this question. Okay, any question that's not open-ended, like, they're just lame. But one question is like, are you okay? That is just one that's people use too often, and for you just to be like, oh no, I'm good, or oh, everything's okay, or like the person that's asking it isn't genuinely deeply invested in your answer. They kind of just, it's superficial and they want you to move on. So be thoughtful about the questions you ask and be curious. And whatever they assess the problem to be, let's just say then you're going to find out more. They're going to open up more. And when they're ready to divulge more, you'll be there for them. And one thing you can always say in response is that, if they did disclose there is abuse or it's unhealthy, you can say, it's not your fault. You don't deserve this, or I value you. One thing I always tell people is mental health is important. So if you're in a relationship that's compromising your mental health or interfering it or taking a toll on it in such a way it's very unhealthy or toxic, then that relationship's not good. So if I'm getting depressed or I'm anxious or all those different things, then it's not healthy. I mean, that's like basic relationship 101. Like you could at least connect with a person in that way. Like you deserve
love and support and security, not angst and anger and, judgment or any kind of self-esteem beat down.
Because if they're already being beat down and you enter the scene with some judgment or like, oh my God, you just need to leave, or like, don't you see this? So
that sounds like a bad idea.
The best way you can help someone is listen to understand and meet them where they're at. And you can always connect them to free resources. I used to work the crisis hotline, domestic violence, sexual assault hotline in school. So I would just talk with people about, and they would tell me how they assess the situation. I would just give them feedback. It could be confidential. Right. No one's going to judge you. And I'm just help you come up with a safety plan. They could always call, and talking about it will help them think about, they start thinking about it, and then eventually it'll be an action. So you're kind of can plant the seeds as a friend so they can start thinking, I do have an out, or I could leave, or I do have this, and talk through them. When they are ready to leave, you can go through the safety plan with them and then help them execute it.
And it goes without saying, if you're feeling unsafe on a date, if something happens that is against the law, of course, to call 911 and report crime when it happens. If somebody's in a domestic partnership and they are in an abusive situation, 800-799-7233 is the National Domestic Violence Hotline. And there's you can also text START to 88788. And there are folks that are willing to help. These are places where they're going to be able to hook you up with local resources and support. It's support for those who don't feel that they have it. And definitely, because I think we've learned a lot this year about, a lot of the stereotypes. I think about one of the things that some of the coverage of the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial is that it doesn't necessarily have to fit into a neat stereotype. I give an amazing amount of props to Mr. Depp for being open with that. And that was, I think an eye opener for a lot of people, because there are a lot of men that unfortunately are in abusive situations, and because of our culture and because of a lot of stereotypes, they may have troubles. So that hotline is for everyone. And so, I'm curious now. We've talked, like I said, in some very general scenarios. Is it ever the woman who's the psycho luring them in from the internet?
Oh, sure. Women
is that happening out there?
So yeah, just because statistically we see it more common in men, but
it's out there, huh? Equal opportunity.
It's equal opportunity. Women want equal rights. They're in it too. So these are just traits anyone can benefit from. And so it's boundaries. If you left this podcast and did nothing, okay, do one thing.
As some of us do.
Okay, well, know who you are, know your boundaries, do a little inventory, and know like who you are. What are your boundaries? You should know your boundaries. If you don't, get some, because someone else will set them for you. Someone will always test your boundaries. I have tough boundaries. If you learn anything about me, you have boundary issues, but I've also worked with I encounter people who want to violate my boundaries. I've worked in places where you're at risk of being assaulted.
Sure.
I worked in the psych hospital. And so some of my boundaries were this: time boundaries. So all different kinds of boundaries, not just physical boundaries, but my time boundary of me just even walking down the hall of the psych hospital, so many people swarming after me to get my attention, but I would make it clear, this is my time and I will not be answering questions. And I need my mental space time, my time. I set time when you meet with me. You do not just aren't intrusive and violate my time or violate my rights. Like, I will control the outcome. And when this is over, I've had people in interviews that say some crazy sexual inappropriate things. And I say, get the F help.
Out you go.
Now, and you stop it now. You're testing my boundary, and it's a no for me. So you set the limits. You say no. You speak your mind. You do not let people walk all over you. I have many times, talking about like physical boundaries, people trying to assault me, I will stick my hand out or step back, and you do not cross this line, or you do not go past this point. Like, so many people so I've gotten really good at really commanding a situation for boundaries, and even working in jail where people are trying to get at you or touch you or talk to you, and you do not let anyone violate your boundaries. You are in complete control. Once you execute that, people will fall in line and they will respect that, and they will know who's in control. Really, I would say for anyone, just assess your boundaries. And if you're feeling a little weak or you don't know where you're vulnerable, it's okay to have some vulnerabilities. Just know where they are and know how these might play out in a relationship, and work on leveraging that and becoming more assertive in your communication. So when I don't feel like I want to do something, or I don't like this guy, or I want to say something, like, you need to practice saying it, practice saying no, or practice executing your boundaries, like with your words. Words is the first place it should start, not when you're being physically assaulted or physically.
That being said, any plans for Valentine's Day? Just
yeah. So no.
I'm a jerk.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. My criteria is just these things, and so we didn't even go into it. You can run, free background checks. I once had that on a dating site, and I got these nasty messages from guys saying, "God, it's just sick. I can't believe you'd spend all that money at your work, like paying for background checks. I only violated my parole that one time, and it was a bunch of lies." And so I'd get these responses. It was hilarious because there wasn't any background check. It was just, I can say whatever I want. And saying that just filtered so many. They filtered themselves out, but they would it's just ridiculous. Background check, you can Google someone, people. It's free. There's so many free stuff online, but don't ever go out with someone you can't verify who they are. Oh my goodness, please just stop. Have you watched? No, stop. So if we go on through these ABCs, arriving on your own terms in your own car, your boundaries, controlling the outcome. D, what does D stand for? Okay, let's.
Don't get drunk.
Okay, yeah. Drugs or alcohol. So look, do drugs or alcohol on your own. That's your thing, okay? But it compromises your judgment and your thinking. You're more prone to be impulsive, make poor decisions. No great decisions have been made, in an inebriated state. So we're talking about a first date here, getting to know someone. You want to be in control. If you choose to have one drink or you buy it on your own. So we're talking, a lot of people will. So again, this is testing your boundaries. Let's just say you say on the first date, I'm not drinking, because maybe I don't even drink.
Oh, come on, just have one. I don't want to drink alone.
So that is, see, you're a killer.
Thanks.
Yeah. So and they will always, this is what they want. They're going to test. Killers rely on you being compromised.
That makes sense.
And they do. I mean, think about Dahmer, all the people they met. and they got him to drink, got him to come home. It changes the whole situation. Let's just say you did drive there and you did have boundaries and you were going to control the outcome. He's like, come on, dude, just a little, come on, or just, whatever it is. You
be cajoled. I don't think you should have to cajole an adult to do anything. You can say, hey, you want a glass of wine? No, thank you. Okay, great. And then, what is oh, come on. Why does that still happen when you're over a certain age, when someone has to cajole you?
Because people are retarded. Because it's like, I don't drink, maybe 3 or 4 times a year or something. So it's not a big deal. I like red wine. But let's just say I just sat on a date. That's who I am. And I'm not having a drink tonight. Like I got an early morning, or this is my boundary. That's fine. I should have a right to do that. That's my terms.
There's a lot of people who don't drink for a variety of reasons.
Yeah, I don't need
and
to.
Most of them aren't anyone's business.
It isn't. So if someone buys you one anyway and sets it in front of you, and then they're like, come on, and then they make fun of you and they're testing your boundaries, this isn't a person I want to be with. They're not respecting my boundaries. They're not respecting me. And I just told them what I wanted, and they're already violating me. So, and then what happens is people with low self-esteem, they're like, oh, okay. Oh,
they don't want to be they don't want to make waves. They don't want to have a confrontation. They don't want to if they're a people pleaser, they're not going to want to, displease the person. You bought the drink. I guess I should drink it. You don't owe anybody a drink. You don't owe anybody to be polite when they're rude. You don't owe people that sort of things. I think, that's a really important point.
And man, I could tell you all the dating stories that I saw end up in the emergency room and then drug tested, and they had a lot of other drugs in their system than they thought they were taking, and then they end up in the psych hospital, and the whole thing ended up differently, and then people get raped or different things, outcomes happen. But we want to avoid this, and these are all really good tips to.
They are indeed.
Not finding yourself in the emergency room with a rape
or worse,
chopped up, and all that's left is your torso in his apartment.
Wow, that's wildly specific. Okay.
That's another story.
That's a whole nother story. That's another show.
That was an interview with someone at the state hospital. I just don't want to be that person. So I hope
we don't want you to be that person either, dear listener. So remember that the tips are to arrive on your own. Well, first, always verify. Always verify people are who they say they are. Let them know, either make sure you Google them, talk with them, video chat or on the phone, make sure you're not getting some sort of swamp fish, catfish, whatever it is. You don't want a swamp fish. Well, maybe you do. I don't know. But always arrive on your own terms, set your boundaries, stay in control, and definitely, don't do drugs. Don't do anything that's gonna, I shouldn't say, I'm not being judgy, and nor were you, but stay in control. Be able to really, manage your environment, because I think that you're gonna need it to navigate in the world.
Yeah, you can't go wrong if you follow these rules. And let's just say it's all fabulous. Again, we're testing him. Did he pass?
You're the hiring manager.
I'm the hiring manager. I say it looks like you may have made it to round 2. And then I have a series of questions that I ask him. Okay. Yeah. So that's why I'm single. But anyway, you're the hiring manager. And so some people aren't qualified for the job, and you don't go doing a hiring interview if you don't even know what the position is. Like, here's what I like. First of all, you have to be funny. And if you're not funny, that's a relation killer right there.
Well, there you go. There you have it. So just, but I'm sure there's a serial killer out there with a sense of humor, but I don't want to meet them.
I haven't met one.
No?
Like with the good, like it's a little.
They're not witty.
So they can be. It's just like, but they think they're funnier than they are.
They laugh at their own jokes.
The reality is I'm funnier than them, and they're laughing harder at my jokes. So I need someone who's funnier than me. And so they're a little grandiose, and they can get a little mad if you don't laugh at their joke, but that they they lack the craft in like their presentation of it sometimes, because they lack some of that empathy or emotion, or just like
Right.
so yeah.
There's a lot of empathy to comic timing.
But again, this goes back to, if they can't tell a good joke, they could be a serial killer, or they're just obviously
There's a whole bunch of boring people who just went, oh no, just now. Oh no.
Oh no, yeah.
I'm staying home.
Yeah.
I'm staying home.
So yeah.
But I think in the end, there's got to be hope for us all. Dr. Dana Anderson, thank you so much for joining us. If you want to learn more about Dr. Anderson and what she does, you can go to psychologydoctor.com. That's psychologydoctor.com, psychologydr.com, and learn a little bit about what she does. There's a whole lot of fun information there about what forensic psychology is all about, and how it works through the court system. I want to thank you so much for taking the time out of your day. Is there anything you want to leave us with?
Yeah, so I just want to provide free, helpful tips throughout the year, just through social media. So any topic that you wanted to learn more about or have me explore in a real and meaningful way, you can just, make comments on social media, anything that you're wanting to learn more about. And I'll be making some videos and just free information that hopefully can be useful. And then anybody that's interested in learning more about a career in forensic psychology, I'll be posting information about that too, because I would like to see more people get into this field.
Fascinating field.
I really enjoy it, and it's can be quite rewarding, and there is a lot of value to this position, between being the gatekeeper between helping people with mental health issues, and then also when the court hires me, letting them know, I make recommendations for sentencing, or have, big legal outcomes. So it is really important to get more people interested in this field. I would be happy to provide more information about that. So, well, thank you for
where medicine and criminal justice meet.
What's that?
That's really where medicine and criminal justice meet.
Absolutely. It's the perfect pair, because it's so important. It's so critically important. And all across the United States, there is too many people in jail, not enough resources. There's a high demand for mental health services, high demand for psychologists, and especially a forensic psychologist who can really dive into the pathology and make diagnostic decisions for the court. So it's a very exciting and rewarding career.
That's amazing. Once again, if you want to follow Dr. Anderson on social media, you can go to the website psychologydoctor.com, and all of your links to your various socials are there. And thanks once again. And to all you folks, have a safe and delightful Valentine's Day. And remember, stay kooky out there. Thank you for listening to Macabre World. You can find us on the web at www.darkerartsstudio.com.